first of all, to introduce myself, my name is Peter, and I was here this weekend leading the Icon Workshop. I live in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and I serve a couple parishes in the outlying areas around Scranton. And I grew up about 2 hours west of there in a town called Williamsport, which you may know because of the Little League World Series, which is the only thing that happens in town every year. And I grew up in the neighborhood where my family has lived for generations. And I went to the same elementary school that my grandparents and my parents went to. I had the same first grade teacher that my mom had. And she didn't like my mom, and she didn't like me. And one of the things, her name was Miss Kirby. And one of the things that Miss Kirby would do regularly when we had a coloring assignment was that she would come up, she had really bony fingers, and she would pick me in the head with her finger and say, "You're never going to amount to anything in art because you can't stay inside the lines." Oh. And I feel like I got my revenge. But the reason I tell you that story is because we all have a Miss Kirby who says to us, you know, you can't do that. You're not able to do that. You're going to fail miserably. And when we started the icon class the other day, knowing that a lot of people have never tried something like this, and knowing that the minute they picked up their brush, Miss Kirby was going to start whispering in their ear, "What do you think you're doing? Why did you can't do this?" And then they did. And the reason that I tell you that story is because Jesus had the same thing in today's gospel. You know, Jesus said to his disciples, "Who are the people saying that I am?" And they were saying, "Well, you're a prophet. You're one of those folks reincarnated." But you know, the funny thing is, they didn't seem to remember how badly the prophets had been treated throughout the history of Israel. And then he said to Peter, "Who do you say that I am?" "Well, you're the Messiah." And that's a really nice thing to say, but it was Peter's version of the Messiah, which never included the parts about suffering and dying and rising again. Peter wanted it all to be nice. You know, we're just going to take over and there'll be no discomfort. We're just going to do this thing and everything is going to be butterflies and unicorns. Those are the two important questions in this reading today. And I think that there's a third question that really isn't asked, but it's the only important question in this conversation. And who does God say that I am? Because it seems to me that that's what Jesus was trying to be faithful to, regardless of the consequences. He was faithful to God, even to death on a cross. And because of that, as we hear in Philippians, God raised him up and gave him the name above every other name. Who does God say that I am? And I'm telling you those little aspects of the reading today because we all live those questions every day. You know, who does everybody else say that I am? That was a really big thing growing up. You know what they say. You know, we're worried about what they think. And that was a very big thing in my neighborhood because everybody knew way too much about everybody else. And then, you know, but who do you say that you are? Well, I say I'm a Christian. I say that I'm a good person. I say that I'm this. I say that I'm that. And then there's one more step that sometimes we miss. But who does God say that we are? God never promised us when we became Christians that we would never suffer. God never promised us that we would never be uncomfortable. And the funny thing is sometimes we treat church like the only place that we can guarantee that we're always going to be comfortable. But did God say that? What did God call us to be? One of my favorite writers, Thomas Merton, talks about the true self. And that's our true self for any of us is who God made us to be. who God dreamed us to be from the very beginning. And Thomas Merton talked about that we need to pray for the discovery of who we are. And then to have the courage to be that which God created us to be, regardless of the cost. When I was growing up, people told me all kinds of things. My dad worked in a steel mill. He told me if I grew my hair too long, I'd never get a job in the steel mill. And I said, all right. You know, he told me that I was going to get a real job. And I said, I'm going to seminary. And he was bewildered. But, you know, like all of us, we've all been called to something. It may not be a job. It may be just to be somebody in our lives. And maybe we've spent an awful lot of time worrying about what everybody else thinks. Of maybe we won't find the kind of job that will pay us well enough if we did what we really wanted to do, so we took another job. Or, you know, you can fill in the blanks. There are so many ways that we could be somebody other than we were supposed to be. And what happens, I think, is that parts of us just start to shut down. But that's not God's dream for us. Because I believe during the last couple of days, a couple of people said to me, how did that time go by so fast? You know, when you just fall into whatever you're doing, it doesn't have to be painting icons. It could be playing golf. It could be hiking in the mountains, in these beautiful mountains here. It could be going for a ride on the ferry boat. Whatever it is, where you just dissolve into your life, I do believe that that's what God intended us to do. And God intended for us to help one another do that too. Because you don't have to be just doing leisure things. You could be working in a soup kitchen. You could be feeding hungry people just because they're hungry, or because they're lonely, or because they're sick, or because whatever. You could be teaching a kid how to read. Who did God call you to be? I'm notorious, back in the parishes where I work, for giving people homework. You never get off just on Sunday morning. You've got to take the homework home with you. Pray about this. Pray for your own discovery, that you might see what God sees when God looks at you. And that you might have the courage to become that even just a little bit more. Last night I was at dinner and Steve Penning said to me that he was totally outside his comfort zone. And that he's made some choices to do some things outside his comfort zone. Our life is not about being comfortable. It's about being alive. So Jesus turned to his disciples and said, who do you say that I am? They said, the Messiah. And he said, but you don't get it. It's bigger than you dream. And I think the same thing is true for all of us. We've been called to so much more than we dare sometimes to dream. But it makes God smile when we do it. May we have the courage to live into God's dream for all of us as we follow Jesus on the